Good morning and welcome to Hanna Worldwide and Friends. My name is James and I'm going to be your host for the day. Today we are turning the tables on Hanna. She has been doing her podcast for a little more than a year and she has interviewed lots of people, but she's never actually faced the questions herself. So we're going to put her to the test and see how she does. Join us as we go through some questions for Hanna about her experience as an expat German living in New Zealand. Okay, a little background information. I was Hanna's second interview in her podcast ever, and we met when I first moved to Germany, and a friend of mine was moving into the same flat that she was moving out of. And we crossed paths and we met and hung out for just a couple of days, but we have kept track of each other and have, had dinners and done all the stuff that you do, and have gotten to know each other and become really good friends. Okay, so you have moved to New Zealand and been here for 5 years or so. Can you tell us what specific factors or influences helped you decide that you wanted to relocate? And then, because you wanted to relocate, why did you choose New Zealand?
Sure. So in the beginning, or when I was younger, my parents were able to go and travel with us every now and then. They were really good in saving their money because they wanted to build a house. But after a while, they were able to fulfill their dream. And then we would go every now and then on a summer holiday or an October holiday, and would start seeing a little bit more from the world. So one of my favorite countries, for example, was Greece. I just had the greatest holiday there with my family, and so I kept wanting to go there. And sometimes we decided on different places like Spain, but it was all Europe, and it was really nice. So I think I just learned a little bit from my parents already that traveling, seeing the world is a nice thing, but I never really thought about doing it just by myself. I ended up traveling quite a bit with my friends as well. We went to Miami, I went to the Maldives. I just spent a little bit more time exploring the world, and I realized I really, really love it. But
how old were you when you were doing this exploration with your friends?
It was pretty much from 21 onwards, just whenever we had time to plan a holiday together. But at that time, I didn't really think of doing it all by myself. I had some friends, and some of my schoolmates were going over after school, like the gap year, and they would do like an au pair or something like that. And I remember one of my friends, who was just a tiny bit younger than me, was actually telling me one day that she will go and will be an au pair in New York, living with a host family with a child with special needs who had autism. And she studied that, so it was also in her area. It wasn't just a gap year, it was also in collecting some work experience and living somewhere else and learning English properly and all of that. I remember I was so proud of her, and I thought, wow, I want to do that too. I want to be able to not be so afraid, and I just want to, have the courage to get out and live my dream. And then my last job I had, where I worked for 7 years, my boss was also really good in like traveling around, doing his studies in all sorts of places in the world. And so me talking to him was always really inspirational, because he told me about this place and I just always thought, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And then he told me about another place, and I was just getting that, not feeling homesick, but like having wanderlust, like really wanting to get out and just experience it myself. And I think the longer I stayed in that job, it was at least 7 years, which is quite a decent amount.
Yes, that's a good amount of time.
Yeah. So I think because I also couldn't really see how I grew more or how I could grow in that role, I thought, okay, it's my moment of actually figuring it out. And I started looking around. I started applying in different countries. I remember it was also Vienna and Switzerland, but also New York, Boston, and then New Zealand was on the list because one of my workmates was telling me about how awesome New Zealand is and that it's her favorite country in the world because it has everything. It has like mountains and beaches and jungle and just every kind of part of the world comes together in one world, one country. So I thought, okay, why not? Let me just check it out and see. And I just used Google Maps to see if I would like it. And I had a couple of other options with friends, like one was Miami, but then that didn't turn out to actually go ahead. So that's pretty much, the world telling you, okay, Miami is not the place for you. Then I had another friend and her cousin was a doctor in Australia, and he potentially could have hired me in a way. But then he moved away at one point again, so that didn't really go ahead. And I didn't really hear back from anyone from the applications because I didn't have a visa. But New Zealand actually got back to me because I was the one who had the most work experience for the job they were looking for, and I would have been the perfect fit. And that was because I was working in a lab for bee health, and they needed someone to work with a bee disease. So I would have been perfect. But I didn't have a visa at that time, so I still had to sort out visa stuff, and I still was working in my job. I couldn't just leave without any notice. So, and I also wanted to pack my life together, so there was no chance for me to get that position. But we stayed in touch, and after a while I decided, you know what, I'm so ready to go, so ready for this adventure. I just applied for a working holiday visa. And I remember I got it, I think, within 2 weeks. And so I started just planning everything and deciding that I will just quit my job really early so that they know and have time to find someone, and I can quit my flat and make sure all the insurances are done and just all the things you do or you have to do when you are leaving a country, even if it's just for a short amount of time. And then I ended up coming over on a working holiday visa and was still in touch with the job who couldn't hire me at the time, but then I was in the country and I had a visa, and so therefore they were able to hire me properly, and then they helped me to get my work visa as well, and now I'm a permanent resident, so it worked out pretty well. And I think that's why I decided to stay, because New Zealand is just really beautiful, nice people, and I still can improve my English. I can still learn a lot and just in general have that overseas experience.
How did you go about adapting your lifestyle, your personal way of going about life, considering cultural differences when you moved from Germany to New Zealand? And maybe to help you come up with some ideas there, can you give us a memorable experience where some cultural challenge came up and you had to deal with that, overcome that, in some way figure out what was happening in the new culture?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of a moment where it was a massive challenge because of the new culture. I feel like New Zealand is really open, the people are really welcoming. Everyone is just so nice. Everyone is relatively relaxed. I mean, you can't really say everyone, but most people, they cherish their life over work, and they want to have a balance, and they want to enjoy life, and they want to make sure that, they have something from life. Just Yeah, so when I came, I felt really good because, my friends always made jokes that I was kicked out of Germany because I'm too friendly, which that's not true. That's not true. But
I think you're really friendly.
Thank you. But I feel like...
For a German.
Yeah. I feel like everyone is making it really easy to adjust. You have a whole new culture in that regard, but I feel like some values are similar. And I think what I've just noticed is sometimes the efficiency is very different. Also, I can't say everywhere because my last workplace here was also trying to be efficient and was hardworking, and it wasn't just, relaxed. But I think in Germany we are really about efficiency. We want to get things done as soon as possible, as good as possible, and if possible, even faster than possible. So I feel like here people take their time. People want to, have a breath and just do things sometimes slowly as well. And yeah, I think that's not a bad idea in living your life away from that, hectic lifestyle. I think that's my main thing I would see here. Just the lifestyle is not as hectic. It's not always about performance. You still want to do a good job, but I feel like there's more important things as well. Also depends on in what company you are, but I think in general it's not just that. When I think about just work-wise, yeah, you can get further without having that qualification sometimes. So I guess it's good for your self-confidence as well. And I don't think I had a massive culture shock in any way, because here, for example, the supermarkets are open 7 days a week. Back home from where I'm from, we wouldn't have it open on Sundays. So it's actually it feels different in that regard, even though you would expect the other way around, that maybe here it would be closed or quieter, and over there it would be open all the time because it needs to be efficient. But it's actually the opposite. Here, definitely way less people. You can tell that here are 5 million people in the whole country, and also spread out on 2 different islands, while back home a big city can easily have 5 million people just in one area. So
you were talking about the businesses and whatnot coming from the States. It's the opposite for me. I'm used to things being open until 9 o'clock every night, 7 days a week. I'm used to, if you need something, just get in your car and go get it, because somebody will be open. Whereas here in New Zealand, things tend to close a little sooner.
Yeah.
And,
I think that's a part, now since you mention it, it definitely is a difference of what products I can get here. You can have, in Europe, you can have everything, and really quickly, because if your country is not producing it, the neighbor countries might have it, and you can, import, export easily. Here, everything takes way longer because it's far away from everywhere. And then on top of that, you also have a really, the variety is just smaller. You don't have as many products. You have to let go of things you know from home. You won't find most of the things. It's not that you can't live without it. It's just you need to adjust a little bit in that regard. You might miss some things, some tastes, some flavors. I mean, nothing against German cuisine, but I think we are not now knowing so many different cultures and knowing so many different cuisines. I think we are not the ones using the most spices. So we might not miss anything in that regard because salt and pepper is everywhere. But generally speaking, you will miss some things, really the typical bread from Germany, certain sausages, because we are really known for our sausage.
That's because it's really good.
Thank you. So it is different here. Even though you find a sausage and you find a Frankfurter, sometimes it's just not the same. But you will definitely be able to adjust.
Speaking of cultural differences and changes, and you had already touched on it in your previous answer, but how has transitioning to full English been for you coming to New Zealand? And is it the same English that you learned in school and were practicing as you grew?
Good question. I would say that the English we learn at school is also British English, and that's pretty much coming from, like here in New Zealand, people speak mainly British English as well. At school you learn the basics, and I feel like it preps you to have really simple conversations and to bring your point across. Like, say you want food, you want drinks, you need something, you need help, where's the way? Those kind of things you learn at school, and just to have really good basic conversation. So people might think your English is really good, but you know that your vocabulary is actually really small. So coming to New Zealand, I realized how small my vocabulary is. Even though I traveled around and I learned a little bit more along the way of traveling into different countries. And I realized some of my friends were way better in English than me. We would travel and someone would say something to me and I would not understand a word. Well, a word maybe, but not really getting the context. And my friend would be able to tell me, hey, that's what he wants or that's what she wants. And so I thought, okay, there's like heaps of potential to actually improve my English as well. And so that idea of actually living in an English-speaking country where you are challenged every day, that was another kind of point why I decided to come over to New Zealand or to move overseas, just so that I can have that challenge and that personal growth. Also, New Zealanders are generally speaking quick, or at least some of them are quite fast. And when you then have your Kiwi accent, it can be quite difficult to understand. Not that it's a heavy accent, but if you haven't heard it before, you really need to get used to it. Coming to get used to it, that was a phrase I have never heard before, because the way we learn the word use is you use a pen to write in a book or something like that. And so I couldn't really figure out in the beginning what that means. Like someone would say it and I would just think, what does it mean? Why? Yeah, it didn't make any sense. And over time, you know, when you have someone who says it and then explains it to you what it means, and then you slowly take it on as well, and you kind of try to feel comfortable in using it as well. And then at one point, like now, I can use it effortlessly in my sentence.
Because you're used to it.
Because I'm used to it now. Exactly. So that's quite a few things like this where I wouldn't have heard it before. It wouldn't make sense to me. And then someone would explain it to me properly. More or less good maybe sometimes, because your brain still, even if someone is trying to explain, as an English native speaker, it's hard to explain to me why you do things the way you do. For me as a German speaker as well, it's hard to explain why we do certain things in German, because you just grew up with it. In that case, it was the same thing. They tried their best to explain it to me, and I just tried my best to pick it up from other people as well, and then use it and broaden my vocabulary, which is nice because I can see that it has been so much better and it got so much bigger, and of course still a lot to learn, but I can have less basic conversations. I can now have proper arguments or like discussions, and also more deeply into specific topics about work, you know, really specific things. And of course there are typical sayings and slangs which not every country, like every country has their own slangs in a way. Like here in New Zealand, of course, they say, for example, mate. So I wasn't really knowing about that. I wouldn't call anyone mate before. It's probably, I think in the UK they do that as well. And it's just like, you know, your buddy, your friend, your workmate, your colleague, your just acquaintance, a mate, exactly. And everyone uses it here all the time. Also, what a really big Kiwi thing is, which I just can't really say because that's one of the things I've never really got used to, is like "chur bro."
Sure.
That's such
I don't use that phrase either. Chur.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those you have to grow up with.
Exactly, to
really
be able to use, yeah.
It is. Sure. I mean, I know what it means. I understand what they're saying, but it's not something that's probably ever really going to come out of me.
Yeah.
Something to say.
Same. And
although I do use sweet as.
That's the main
or the
thing.
whatever as.
Yeah.
That Kiwis use a lot.
Yes.
You know?
That's actually the main thing, which I also got warned a little bit in the beginning before I came over. But you don't really notice it. And then you come to New Zealand and someone says sweet ass. And in German it would be a little bit like translated one-on-one, like cute butt. And that's not what they want to say, and that's not what they mean.
No.
But you can easily misunderstand that. Mm-hmm. You can think like, oh, why is he commenting on my butt? Like,
well,
I mean, thank you. But, and as you say, they are not just saying sweet ass in form from, or to say, thank you, yes, of course, you're good, it's okay. Like, they use it for everything.
Right, they do.
You can also say it's sweet as something or good as something or...
So sweet as is like a very common phrase, but is hot as today.
Yeah.
Hot as what? No, that's it. It's just hot as.
Exactly. There's nothing coming after.
No, there's nothing coming after. Hot as, happy as.
I'm happy as. I'm sad as. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. You are waiting for more. You are waiting for something to compare it to, because that's how you learn it at school. Right, if there's an as, this, as, less. In this case, I wanted to say better, but then you have to use then. Good as something else. And here you are waiting and there's just nothing coming. And in the beginning, that's just really confusing.
All right, we're in the car now. We're going to go to a different location. We were in Hamilton Gardens, and now we're going to head over to Hanna's podcast studio and answer some more questions there. But while we're driving, we're going to talk just a little bit about a topic that came up, and we're going to talk a little bit about things you might need to consider if you are moving from one country to another.
The part which I really underestimated when I started was the visa situation. I think it is really important to understand that you have barely any chance to find a job if you are not already having a visa which allows you to work in that country. There are different options, for example with the working holiday visa like I did, but you have to consider that there is a limit for the age as well. So some countries have the age limit of 30 for the working holiday visa, and some other countries have the limit of 35.
Yeah, the working holiday visa wasn't really an option for me.
Yeah, since you were above 30 and 35. Exactly. So in that case, it is really good or important to do your research. Also, I think you should always check out what type of lifestyle you are looking for. I think now, looking back, I'm really happy with the decision of New Zealand, but sometimes I feel like it's really, really quiet. I get really comfortable and I actually really love the peace and quiet, but it is so far away from your family and friends that if you want to go somewhere, it is a big effort. So if you're a big traveler and if you really want to see the world, I think New Zealand might be sometimes not the right choice, just because it's far away, it's quite expensive to go to other places. Always depends on your financial situation or what you're looking for.
Yeah, that is a big issue with New Zealand. We are at the bottom of the world, and you want to go anywhere, it's going to be at least a 12-hour flight. At least one 12-hour flight.
Exactly. Yeah, the closest will be like the islands around. But even then, you have to fly at least 4 to 5, 6 hours. And yeah, the cost of living here is also quite high at the moment. But of course, there are different countries with similar problems in the cost of living aspect. There are also things I thought about potentially moving to New York or to Boston, but now I'm quite happy I didn't, because I do enjoy the not so big city life. I like to go out sometimes and to be able to visit the big city, but I don't necessarily need to live in the big city. I used to live in Berlin for a couple of years and I just did not enjoy it as much. And so I think there are just certain aspects you should consider, especially if you think about moving long term. Also, since we talked about the visa, it is really important to see if you, for example, want to study overseas, which usually allows you to work a couple of years afterwards, but the international study fees are insanely high. So that's something you should also be able to think or to finance in the first place. Just a few things to consider. Also, just make sure that, there are people who probably would be able to just quit their job and just leave, but most of us probably should consider resigning from work, making sure that they have everything they need in their documents. I would check all the documents like passport and stuff, that it's actually still valid for a decent amount of years, because you don't want to go over and then realize that you need to renew your passport a few years or a few months later. It's just a hassle, and you can definitely save yourself some trouble by just organizing all of that. And which really helped me was doing the IELTS test before I left. The IELTS test, just to explain, is an English test which is pretty much putting you into a category of your level of English. And most countries and most jobs need proof that you are able to have proper conversations, that your English level is good enough to be able to live there. And in that case, I did that before I came to New Zealand, because I knew if I ever want a resident visa here, I need that for sure. And it usually is valid for 2 years, so I was really lucky. Just, really do your research on the visa situation and what you want from it. You can, as I did, decide pretty spontaneous in a way sometimes, that you don't just go for 1 year, you want to stay longer, but you will always need some support, so it's not as easy as it sounds. And also what I've just learned after talking to Melissa Cox, who wrote the book, So You Want to Move to New Zealand, and she's from America. There are so many rules about tax and all of that, which you should definitely think about before you make any decisions of living overseas, just so that you don't find yourself in a really bad financial situation. But otherwise, I just would say be open-minded, be open to new cultures and new people, and just don't have expectations on different people, because as this really nice quote said, the country you are going to visit is made for the people to be comfortable for the people who live in that country and not for us who just travel to this country. We are not meant to be comfortable in a new country because everything is new, it's a challenge, and I think just being friendly and making sure that you are friendly because you are a guest in a different country. Yeah, I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. It's not our country, it's their country. It's made for them, by them. We can't expect them to hold on to our cultural expectations. We can't expect them to do it the way we would do it back in our home country. If we wanted it to be that way, then we should stay in our home country.
Exactly. So just being really open with your mind and with your heart, and just, don't expect what you had at home. And sometimes just to be prepared to work harder, just because you start from scratch and you had your life wherever you grew up, but it will be very different in a new country. You might come with your family, you might come with friends, you might come by yourself, you might come with your partner, but it will be definitely always new. You will face challenges, as I also had in one of my episodes about the shady sides of living overseas. It's not always just amazing. You will feel lonely, you will have the feeling of homesickness, and you will experience also difficult things. And that's just a part of it. So it's important to not forget about. It's not just living a dream. A lot of people think also it's like really fun, but I'm having my life here like I would have back home in Germany. I'm going to work every day. I'm doing daily life things. I'm navigating life as I would in Germany as well. So it's not like a long-term holiday where I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, in a way.
Gotta wake up, go to work, make money.
Exactly.
All right, welcome to Hanna's studio. We are sitting outside of the sun for a little bit, and we're gonna go eat in a little while to one of her favorite restaurants. But right now, a few more questions in studio. All right, ready?
Yes.
Okay. So what are some of the hidden gems in New Zealand that you've discovered that you find interesting, amazing, places you want to return to?
Oh, I always feel a little bit overwhelmed when someone asks me this question because I never feel prepared. But there are so many places which are gorgeous, obviously. But then because I have been to most of them so many times, it's then when it becomes more like your day-to-day routine. It's harder to think of it as such, but what I really love is on the South Island, there is a track called Hooker Valley Track, and it's at the Mount Cook area. And I just absolutely love the view. First of all, you have the mountains, which depends on the time you go there. It's the time when it slowly starts to melt the ice, and then you have like lots of waterfalls. And that was when we saw so many amazing waterfalls coming down.
I really would like to get to the Hooker Falls track, and I would really like to photograph that area because it's absolutely gorgeous.
What's great is when it starts to melt, the whole ice from the actual glacier and the tops and summits of the mountain is just coming down. It's not like usually a waterfall, but it looks like many beautiful waterfalls coming down. It's just really pretty. And I remember we were around October. I've been there twice now, and I recommend it to everyone. I just love it so much. And you just have a really nice walk, which is not too difficult as well. So you can take your kids as well if you have some. And you would just, even if you're not a big hiker, it's just for everyone. And you have a couple of swing bridges, and you walk while being like between the mountains. And it's just how the water is slowly running like a little river. And then at the end of the walk, you have like this glacier lake. It's just so beautiful. And even the drive to that place is beautiful because you have Lake Tekapo, which is like turquoise and beautiful, like just the color of the water because of the glacier water is just amazing. So all of it is already like breathtaking. So every time people ask me, I'm like, okay, if you are down there, do that as well. And I guess for a lot of people, it's also here up in the north, like Hobbiton. But that's mainly when you like Lord of the Rings, and it is cute. So definitely worth going and checking out. But just the little things here in Hobbiton which I like, which I usually go, is like even just the uni. The uni area looks really nice. It has a couple of lakes, how they call it, more like ponds. And just walking around it, not many people, just nature. And yeah, just breathing, but also just all these little walks you find on every part of the street. You can park your car somewhere and there's a little reserve, and then there's a little walk, which makes you feel like in the middle of the jungle. And that's really what I love as well. Just it transports you into a completely different feeling and set of location. You feel like Indiana Jones in the jungle discovering something. And also the beaches, like amazing views. You have the white sand on the east side and the dark black sand on the west side. So for us, Raglan is of course the closest. And so going there, just enjoying the view from up there because it goes downhill mostly. Just really nice to listen to the ocean.
Have you hiked up Karioy?
No, I haven't.
Not yet?
No. With hikes, I have to say, I was always a little bit worried because in the beginning when I came, I've never really done much hiking. And so sometimes I have issues with my knee joints and with my hip joint. And so I never experienced much of it. And I remember in the beginning, I was traveling. I met two guys in the hostel and we were traveling together. And they were so keen on doing all the hikes and also the proper ones with like 7-8 hours of hiking. And I was curious, so I wanted to join, and it really pushed my boundaries as well. But then you feel so proud of yourself when you actually make it to the summit, even though you wanted to sometimes give up. It's like, oh my God, I can't do it anymore. But then being up there is just amazing. You have the best view ever, and you feel like you're personally growing by doing a big hike you thought you wouldn't do and you couldn't manage. So that's also some parts where it's such a big part of New Zealand. Hiking, outdoors, biking, yeah, just activities outdoors. So, yeah.
Speaking of the outdoor activity and being out in nature, how does New Zealand's natural environment compare to Germany's? What do you find, not necessarily better or worse, but unique or interesting that you find here but not in Germany, or vice versa, that's in Germany but not here?
Sometimes it's hard to tell because I'm one of those people who hasn't traveled much in my own country. Shame on me, but I know a lot of people feel the same way. So I actually mainly know the north where I grew up, which is like where the Baltic Sea is. So I'm familiar with the ocean, but obviously it looks very different from the ocean here and the beaches. So we don't have these, gorgeous looking beaches. It's also pretty. It's just different. But I loved it. I was often at the Baltic Sea, and we were not living too far away. So it was like a 3 hour drive. Hard to tell. But it wasn't too far away. Well, when you're
time is different when you're a kid.
Exactly. But when you are down in the south, in Bavaria, for example, you're so close to the mountains. So you have the mountains, but you don't really have the beach. So you would miss the beach a lot, while I didn't really experience much mountains unless we would go on a holiday to like Austria. I think just having everything so close to each other, because it's an island, you can go from one side to the other within probably 3 hours, plus minus, and that's something which is very unique.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I learned about New Zealand right before I moved here was it doesn't matter where you are in the country, you're never more than 2 hours from a beach.
Yeah. Even though you sometimes, like from Hamilton to Wellington would be like 7 hours drive-ish, but still it doesn't feel so far away. It's interesting. Of course, we don't have palm trees or something like that back home, which I enjoy because it always gives me kind of a feeling of vacation. That's unique in a way. And then the jungle parts, we don't really have like that. We have parts where when you go hiking, you have some really nice like plants, and it's like all grown like it's wild. So it might look a little bit more like it. So that's why I don't want to say too much about my own country, because I haven't experienced it myself. So I could say now, oh, it's not there. But someone might know, oh, if you go in this part, then you will find it. So I know there's hiking more in the south as well. But here it's definitely more common, I would think.
Going to switch gears just a little bit, and we've talked a little bit about community, but we'll go back to New Zealand community, back into more human interactions. You've been doing a really good job of building your own community with your podcast, and I know you have, lots of followers and lots of listeners, and it's continuing to grow, right? And you're looking for ways to grow it even more. What are some of the similarities and differences between like the community values, the community interactions, however, whatever community you want to think about, small personal communities that might exist within the city or the whole city, however you want to look at it. Some major similarities between New Zealand and Germany, and also some differences between New Zealand and Germany. Not necessarily good or bad, just not wanting that kind of information, but what are some of the things that are the same and some of the things that are really different?
That's a difficult one.
Yeah, that's why I asked it.
Where I really need to think. I guess one of the interesting parts is that, as you said, I built my own kind of community here, and it's funny enough that most of the people are actually not from New Zealand. So I have a really multicultural community here where I know I have met so many people from all over the world. I have a lot of Indian friends, I have friends from Iran, I have friends from America, friends from Sri Lanka, just lots of friends from China, from all over the world, really, South Africa. And it's funny for me, when we talk about community, I always feel with the word about the people from that place, which of course I don't really know. I'm not a massive part of a Maori community or a Kiwi community, but I feel like this is such a melting pot here as well. So here are so many people from different countries that we all come together and we learn from each other. And I think back home, I grew up in a really small town and then moved out to a little village 10 to 15 minutes away from that town. And so everyone kind of knows each other. I also grew up Roman Catholic, so I had the church community as well, where one part of my family was in. And so community for me back home always meant family, and people know each other, people would try to help each other. I sometimes feel like being less, or trying to not be exclusive, and letting people in who are different would be nice. So I think the main difference is back home my community was the same people from Germany, from probably mainly the same city, the same town, same village. So I don't want to say everyone is really small-minded or not open-minded, but you can feel it, it's different. And when you then go away and you move away, you learn something more. And because we don't have university or anything in my hometown, most of us had to move away to do their studies and education. And you can feel the difference of the people who stayed and who never really left, and the people who have seen more of the country. So one big difference is now I don't only hang out with people from Germany as a bigger community, I hang out with a lot of people from everywhere. And that's probably my main difference. Here I learn about every single country in the world when I meet people from that country. And I also learn about the Maori culture. I learn about this country here. While back home I would mainly learn about our stuff. It's smaller. It's not bad, but for me it would be feeling more like I'm trapped in a way, and I wouldn't feel as free. So I think both sides are looking after each other. The communities want to help out each other and make sure everyone is doing all right. Maybe New Zealand are a little bit more, just because of their really friendly and open nature, and they don't mind strangers as such as much. But just in general, I feel like New Zealand in itself is like a big village. So people are talking to each other on the street, if they know each other or not. They say hi, like when you walk in a village and you just say hi to the people who live there, and people do that here too. So that's a little bit of a difference as well. And similarity is, I think, the value, what they want that community represents, just in general, that you are there for each other. But I guess one is a little bit more open for different cultures, while back home I think it's still so, especially in a small town, not so many people from different countries, so probably looking at people from other countries more, not skeptical but careful. You wouldn't be trusting immediately. You would want to get to know them first and make a judgment, while here it's like everyone is from all over the world, so it's like, hi.
One more question here, and
Yes,
then we'll go get some food.
Sounds good.
Here in New Zealand, we're talking about outdoor experiences, community experiences, work experiences you've talked about so far, some changes to lifestyle. What's a really unique experience, not necessarily a location, but it could involve a location, but a really unique experience to New Zealand that really stands out for you?
It was something I already touched on, which is the outdoor experience. Because for me, I haven't done hiking before, really, in that scheme of things. So I was nervous because I had no idea if my body would be capable of doing it, because I haven't done it yet. I bought my very first hiking shoes here in New Zealand, and I guess there were a lot of moments where I would be doubtful, because I was going with two guys and they were taller and stronger and fitter, and just in general I had no idea what to expect.
And where did you go?
So I have 3 hikes in mind which really stand out.
Okay.
So the very first one was Arthur's Path on the South Island, which
beautiful part of the country.
Very pretty. Was my first hike, and I was a little bit scared. Also, I'm I'm that typical person who needs to pee every time you don't have a toilet. So I know it sounds weird, but that was a big part of my thought process. How can I actually do a 7-hour hike with no bathroom, no toilet, nothing? I was super nervous. And you need to drink. So drinking means, you might need to use a bathroom. So a lot of questions in my mind, but I just thought, okay, just do it. And I ended up going with the 2 guys I met, and then we met another person on the way who is a really good friend of mine now. And we did it, and it was very challenging for me physically. It wasn't like a proper path where you just walk and you have stairs. It was really natural, and you had to...
I've been there. It's it's a trek.
Yeah,
as they say here in New Zealand,
track,
it's just a trek.
Exactly. So sometimes I felt really short, and then I had to do a really big step up a route and like a rock, and I managed, and it was really cool. But I was slower, which was fine. They were looking after me, which was good, and I tried to enjoy it as well. And there was still snow on top of the summit, and it was a little dangerous, I have to say, because we didn't really see where we walk on because the snow covered it, and there were sometimes some holes where if you step into, you can actually fall through, and you have no idea where you would land. You can't see if there's rock under it or if there's just nothing. That was kind of scary, but we made it safely. We took care of each other, and it was beautiful up there, just amazing. And then coming back down, I think it was like a 7-hour walk we did, and I was feeling tired, of course, but I managed everything. I had water, I didn't need to go to the bathroom, and it was just an amazing experience. But of course I was exhausted, and my body was telling me, oh, okay, that's something you usually don't do. And then we had another experience also down there in Queenstown, where the Ben Lomond track is. Also still snow up there. I remember the guys wanted to do it from the bottom, and there was also a gondola which would have taken us up at least a little bit higher, but they thought it's cheating. So we did it from the bottom, and I have to admit I was already exhausted when we just made it from the bottom to where the gondola would have stopped. So I was like, okay. And then we continued the walk, and I thought, like, they are so fast and fit, and I'm just already so exhausted. My legs hurt, and I just walked slower. And then there was like one part where a sign was, and it said, I think 1 hour to the top. And then it got really steep, and it had snow, and there was a bench just there. And I was like, okay, I guess that's my part, where I just stay on the bench and I let them go, and I wait for them to come back, and I just have a rest. And that was where I thought I reached my limit. But then actually ending up thinking to myself, well, what's the point in sitting here waiting for them? It's at least an hour, probably more, because an hour up and probably like at least 45 minutes back down. So sitting here for 2 hours doesn't really make sense. And then I saw, and that sounds maybe really judgmental, but I saw another young girl coming down. And I thought, if she can do it, I can do it. And I thought, I don't even have to make it all the way up to the top. I can just,
I've said the same thing. I've seen somebody else coming down, and I've been like, nah, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I guess I am kind of judging them a little bit, but I'm more judging myself against them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And really saying, I'm not as bad as I think I am. I'm not as unfit as I think I am.
Yeah.
I'm at least as fit as they are. And if they can do it, I can do it. And
exactly, you underestimate it, and it's so easy. Exactly,
you underestimate your own abilities. You underestimate your own fitness. Oh, well, I've never done this before, and and I'm out I'm thinking of photography trips where I'm out with, 15 kilos of gear on my back. And
yeah, exactly. It's a challenge, and because we haven't experienced it before, it's like, okay, this is your limit. But then you realize it's actually not. You can push it if you stop listening to that inner voice saying you can't do it. And that was an amazing feeling because I just did it really slow. I told myself, you don't have to make it to the top. You can just, walk towards the guys. And if they come back, then you just walk back down with them. And so I had that goal. Okay, after a while, I thought, what if I actually make it to the top before the guys come back? And so I set myself that little goal without any pressure, in my own pace. And I just did some steps, took a pause, did some steps, took a pause, because my legs were so tired. But just really that slow, step by step, pause, really made me go all the way. And then one part, 5 minutes before the summit, the guys came back. And they were like, what are you doing here? Oh my God, you are nearly there. And then they really went all the way back to the summit with me together, because they wanted me to see it. And so I was grateful for them and them also supporting me. And I was so proud of myself.
Oh yeah.
Actually going there and being like, wow, I did it. I see that view, I enjoy that view because I pushed myself. And it was amazing. And I knew at that moment that I can do it.
Welcome back. We are now in coffee culture at Five Crossroads in Kirikiriroa, Aotearoa, or Hamilton, New Zealand. Might be a little loud in the background, but we'll make it work. They only make, it's mid-afternoon, so coffee's not too, whatever. I don't drink coffee. You ready?
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about career and work.
Career and work, okay.
How has your career evolved since you've moved to New Zealand?
My career has changed quite a little bit since I'm here in New Zealand, because what I've noticed is that because I haven't studied back home, I decided to do a vocational training to not wait around, because for us, because studying is free or kind of free, we have really small fees. It's like a system where it's about your grades, and then first person with the best grade is pretty much coming in. Thank you.
By study, you mean university?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, right. For us, we would say study only. Use that word when it's university. We don't really use it for any other education. So that's why I sometimes need to get used to the fact that studying just means like learning something. So in that case, I mean university. So when you want to go to university and you have good grades, then it's easier for you to get in because the better grades can go in first. So in that case, I would have to wait like another year to actually go and study, or being able to study. And my mom was like, there's no way of you waiting around. You definitely do something in between. And so I did pick my vocational training after what I wanted to study, and so I did become a technician for chemistry and biology. So I was really good, trained in being practically in the lab, also learned some stuff along the way, of course theoretically, and definitely was able afterwards to go out in the world to actually work. So then I had the choice after 2 hard years of studying, in your words, to actually make the decision, do I go back to university now and study, or do I decide to pick a job first and make some money? And that's what I did. So I ended up not going to university and started working as a technician. So for us, it is really, if you want to kind of become something else than a technician, you have to study. If you have no degree or if you don't have a certificate for certain things, it's hard to actually move up or to actually grow into something different. Like a career change means usually you need to go back to study and make sure that you have the certificates for that. Here, I was lucky enough with my job that they supported me as a technician, and I made it, I think, really, really clear that I'm ambitious and I want to grow and I don't want to stay in the same position. And after a while, my team leader did not really want to be a team leader. She wanted to rather be like the scientist of the team. And so my big boss at that time had a conversation with me after I mentioned that if I don't have anywhere to grow, I would probably at one point start looking for new jobs. And she was then offering me that my team leader would become the scientist of the team and I could become a team leader because she sees like the soft skills in me for this role. And this wouldn't have happened in Germany. I wouldn't probably, there might be some companies, maybe like private companies, who have a different approach, but in general it wouldn't have happened to me that I could become like a leader or a management position by just showing that I work hard and that I'm capable of doing certain things or that they see something in me. But here it's also about your experience, it's about your personal, like your skills, your knowledge, and your personality, which they see. And I was lucky that they saw something in me and gave me the opportunity to try something new. And I enjoyed it in some ways. In other ways, because of other certain circumstances, it was really hard. So after another 2 years, I decided to move on. But now I'm in a position where it's about dairy, and I've never studied anything about dairy. I have never worked with cows. I have never done farming. So also I had the opportunity, because of my skill set, because of how I presented myself and because what they saw in me. And that's what I really appreciated, because it does help with the progression of the career. Like you can grow into something, and just because of who you are and who you want to be, then you just try harder. There might be companies where it's also hard to get into without a certain qualification. I'm not saying everyone would take you here, but I think people are more open to see you with your skills and less of what your certificate says.
So that's a pretty big difference in the work culture between Germany and New Zealand. Can you think of any other like really notable differences in the work culture between New Zealand and Germany?
I feel like some places might be very relaxed. You think you're stressed, but it's actually not stressful. It's actually manageable. But I have come from a company here in New Zealand where it was very stressful. It was very challenging and people would expect a lot from you. So I think a lot of places here have a more relaxed approach. Definitely what I can say is everyone is less about the title in general. So for example, you can talk to the CEO of the company without feeling awkward. It's also just another human, and they make you feel that way as well. But I guess it's also about the personality, because I have come across some people who put more meaning into their title. But for example, when I wanted to grow, the title for me was super important because of what I've experienced back home. While for them, they couldn't really understand why I needed a certain title. That was interesting. And just that for Christmas parties, for example, they have an interesting drink culture here, where you drink with the CEO, you drink with the big bosses, and they let loose as well. And while back home we would try to not, be drunk at our Christmas party with our colleagues and with our bosses, and we would try to, hold back. Not like, for me, I'm barely drinking anything, but generally speaking, you don't want to have a negative or make a negative impression, while here you are kind of encouraged to do so sometimes as well, which I found quite interesting. And generally speaking, working with a lot of different cultures feels different for sure. You have to speak a different language if you come from a different speaking country. You are expected to do your best to understand what they want from you, and they put a lot more onto the fact of making it like fair and being inclusive and being open for different cultures, but also trying to invite their own culture back into more, like the Maori culture, for example, which got lost a little bit in a lot of places. So they tried to slowly implement it again. In every place I've been so far, there are so many people from different countries, and so they have to adjust. They can't just make it a place for New Zealander only. But what I like is, and I think every country is doing it, New Zealander come first still. Like, they want to look after their own people first as well, and especially when it comes to job opportunities and visa and all of that. You only get that job if you can prove that no Kiwi can do that job as well. So you need to have something unique and helpful to be able to get the job offer over a New Zealander, which I guess is fair, to make sure you look after your people first.
Looking back, how do you perceive the person you used to be in Germany compared to the person you are today in New Zealand? After 5 years.
I would have thought, after 5 years of living in a different country, you are a different human. And on the one hand, it's true somehow. But on the other hand, I feel like, because now I'm living also a normal life. I'm going to work every day. I'm having my normal life pretty much like everyone else and like everyone back home in a way. So in that case, it doesn't feel any different anymore, or not as much. And you don't notice your personal growth as much. I think it's occasionally that you think or remember you wouldn't have done it before, or you used to do it another way, or something scared you before, but it's not that scary anymore. So I feel like now I know I can rely on myself, I can be independent, and I know I could move countries anytime and it will be okay. And that deep trust of me being capable of doing it is there. And the fear is definitely, I wouldn't say gone, because it will always be a scary process. And there will be always like insecurities coming up and uncertainties, but generally speaking, it's just a little bit less scary, the whole process in itself. What I mentioned before, the biggest change I've noticed since I'm in New Zealand is really that I was able to accept myself more. I have my moments for sure, but especially like the body image issues I had like kind of little mental breakdowns frequently just by looking into the mirror. And since I'm in New Zealand, I haven't had that at all. So I have moments where I look at myself and I'm like, I don't like this or I don't like that, and I could lose a little bit here, but I haven't had a breakdown, I wasn't like affected as
All right. At the end of every podcast, Hanna always asks her guests 3 rapid-fire questions, and they're supposed to be really, really short answers, like 1 word, 2 words. We'll see if she can stick to it. I know I couldn't. But Every guest answers the same 3 questions, and she's going to do the same. You ready?
Yes.
All right. First question. If you couldn't live in New Zealand and you couldn't live in your home country of Germany, where would you live?
I would go to Ireland.
Why Ireland?
I have been there before. I remember I loved the nature. I loved the people. They were so friendly, open. The music playing, it was just a good mood. So I think I remember feeling like if I would go overseas, I could imagine living in Ireland.
All right. Second question. What do you miss most about Germany?
Also very cliche, I definitely do miss the most my family and friends. I feel that strongly at the moment. Oh, yep. Only one word.
And finally, third question. What do you love the most about New Zealand?
I love the most about New Zealand the untouched nature. Just that everything is so beautiful and you never really get used to it. You are still in awe every time you see something, and
yes,
you never get tired of it.
There's lots of it.
Yeah.
All over. All right. Well, we would like to thank you for watching the first video podcast for Hanna Worldwide and Friends. And if you've enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe, give it a like, the usual YouTube stuff. But also, there are heaps of other podcasts where Hanna has interviewed all sorts of people from around the world. So wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, you name it, go there, listen to other podcasts. My name is James Elam, and that is it.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you for being my interviewer and also my project partner, the editor, the video recorder, the director, just the whole package. And
you're very welcome.
I want you all to check him out. He has his own page for photography. He's doing amazing landscape photography. It's James Elam. You find him on Instagram, you find him on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you want to look for social media for people. And check him out. He also has his video blog. So make sure you look at it, subscribe, like, and thank you so much for following around and listening and watching to the first episode of 2024.
Bye.
Bye.